Rescue crews are working around the clock in hopes of finding survivors in both Turkey and Syria after this week's deadly earthquake.
More than 22,000 people are dead, and that number is growing. Rescue efforts have intensified amid growing calls for more humanitarian aid. So for more on this, we want to bring in Dr. Julie Varughese. She is the Senior Vice President and Chief Medical Officer of Americares. Dr. Varughese, thank you so much for joining us. So let's just start off with what type of aid is Americares sending over to Turkey and Syria following the earthquake? I imagine the need is vast. What do you guys specialize in?
Thank you so much for having me. Americares responds to many disasters all over the world. And certainly for a disaster of this magnitude, we are really focused on sending critical medicines and medical supplies. We were fortunate to have a shipment that was already en route to one of our local partners that works in Turkey and Syria that had surgical supplies. And we have another shipment en route with critically needed chronic disease meds. So you think about people with diabetes, asthma, high blood pressure that are now out of their medications and need restocks. It also includes antibiotics and other kind of surgical and trauma care supplies.
Dr. Varughese, we're hearing that access is such a huge problem in these countries right now. Can you speak a bit about how you physically get all of that help to people who need it?
That's a great question. And certainly, as you mentioned, it's really complex in terms of getting medications to that particular region. But thankfully, we have a long, history around getting meds to, Turkey and into the region to partners in Syria. Even before the earthquake, we're fortunate to have longstanding partnerships with organizations that work locally in Turkey and Syria and really understand some of those complexities in terms of getting products in. Certainly in this moment, there are added complexities following the earthquake, but we are very fortunate to have a phenomenal logistics team that has a lot of experience around this.
You know, the recovery from this is going to take a long, long time. You guys are here now, but when you talk about medications for sort of chronic diseases, diabetes, I think when people go without these medications, their health must deteriorate significantly, and that must have long-term implications. What are sort of the long-term healthcare needs that you're also considering?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly we expect to see acute exacerbations of many of those conditions. The healthcare systems, are really demolished and very fragile to begin with, even before the earthquake. And so people are going to need to access care and may not have that access. And so we may see complications from their conditions. I would also really highlight mental health as a major need. This is, a region that was already dealing with a lot of challenges and compounding mental health conditions already. And so then putting the earthquake on top of that, you're thinking about depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so there's going to be a lot of long-term mental health needs as well for community members.
Doctor, I also want to ask about the economic impact, because we're looking at these images inside Turkey and Syria. So much infrastructure there is just completely demolished. Where do we begin when we talk about recovery efforts on the ground? Are countries like the U.S. really doing enough to help?
Yeah, we are seeing just kind of a global coming together of support in the region, but it is a great question. I would just really highlight that in these first few days and first week, the focus really is on search and rescue, really ensuring that anyone who is, still alive is identified and then found underneath potential rubble. And so the focus really, I think, in these first phases is around search and rescue, and then addressing some of those longer term needs around health needs, but also that infrastructure that you mentioned. And it's going to take a very, very long time.
Right now, the eyes of the world, they're focused on this tragedy. But as you know, after a while, something else takes over the headlines and the news, and people aren't donating as much. What are some of the concerns that you have when our attention shifts away? What do you see in cases of these natural disasters when they're no longer making the headlines?
I really appreciate that question because it is true. There's so much happening in the world at any given moment. And, just continuing to raise awareness and visibility around this earthquake is going to be important. And so we're very fortunate to have support from many donors and partners, both financially to continue our response work, but just continuing to stay informed and to raise visibility is going to be important. But Americares stays long term in many of the places where we respond, and we really rely on those local partnerships and ongoing funding to be able to do that work.
Dr. Varughese, we really appreciate the work that you are doing and raising attention right now. We appreciate you having you here. I'm sure you got a lot of other things to do. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.